Joining us for a look at the news of the week is Sugata Mukherjee, with the editor of the Triangle Business Journal, Becky Gray, a senior vice president with the John Locke Foundation, and John Camp, the managing editor of the ABC 11 I-Team. Sugata, kick us off. What's the news of the week the business community needs to know?
Well, Joe, we have two different things this week that we are looking at. One is, of course, the wages, sort of parlaying as to what we had reported last week. And we looked at statistics from 2010 about North Carolina industries, and then what has happened with the employment, the wages, and the number of establishments in the last 6 years. Results are somewhat interesting. Among total industries, we had a 4% growth in the number of companies, all industries combined. In wages, we only had an 8.8% increase in wages. Now, this is cumulative. This is not an annual or an average or perhaps a median. And in number of jobs, total jobs created across all industries, we had 11.6%, which is good by North Carolina standards if you look at the history and especially the recession. But it seems the wages are lagging the number of jobs. And it sort of shows when you break down the industries that, manufacturing, interestingly, has done well in the state in the last 6 years. Information technology jobs have grown, but what is more interesting, perhaps, is the salaries have grown faster than any other industries. So we are sort of looking. The second part is what we are looking at is RDU International Airport. As you know, and Becky probably will talk a little bit about the budget, RDU is done very well in certain areas and not so well operationally in certain areas. So we're sort of looking at, we just came out with the rankings, and then there was a 50, among the 50, RDU did not fare that well. That's what we are looking at going forward.
What are the implications for the state's business community on this issue relative to wages?
Well, it sort of gives you a blueprint as to what we should be following very closely, because if the wages don't go up, we may have an issue with talent retention. Because if their wages going up in other states at a faster rate, you may have an issue with that.
Interesting. Becky, what's news this week from your perspective that the business community needs to know?
Well, on this wage issue, I think it's very important to keep those measures, to continue to look at those, to look at the unemployment rates, to look at employment, to look at who's getting the jobs, where they are. Just looking forward, where do we need to put resources and training to make sure that we have the workforce, we have those well-skilled workers to step into the jobs as we have employment growing. And so all of these statistics and these things are very important to look at. I think it's important too to look at it over a time frame to identify trends, where we need to go for planning purposes. I think sometimes with those you just have to be careful that it's not a snapshot that doesn't give you the full perspective of what we need to do, how businesses need to plan, how government needs to respond to those needs to be able to fill in, again, for those resources, education, infrastructure needs, those kind of things. So I think this is very important information that we need to stay on top of. And again, long-time trends I think are really important.
Well, I know with your position with John Locke, you look very closely at what the state's doing relative to trying efforts to attract employers with incentives and those sorts of things. What's some of the news relative to that?
Well, Joe, you mentioned attracting businesses with incentives. I would argue with the premise of your question. That is not the way that we attract businesses. The better way to attract businesses is low taxes, fewer regulation, having a strong infrastructure in place. Sugata mentioned the airport. Putting money into those kind of things is a better way to attract businesses, because then it's a fair way to do it. You're attracting what you're doing is you're really opening the doors wide, saying North Carolina is ready for business. We welcome business. Come to us. Not we like this one business. Please come here. We'll give you money. The better way to do it is not through these economic incentives. I took a look before we came on the air. There are about from my calculations, there are about 24 individual bills in the General Assembly this session that promotes those economic incentives, that take resources away from one business at the advantage of another, government picking winners and losers. Just the better way to look at this is in this budget, in the negotiations that are going on, the finance package, look at the lowering of the franchise tax, look at the lowering of the corporate income tax, look at increasing the standard deduction so that there's a balance with these kind of things. A tax system, lowering regulations is another one. The farm Farm Act of 2017 is something we're seeing going through. Agribusiness is extremely important in North Carolina. Other regulatory reform bills. Those are things that I think the focus needs to be on if you're going to encourage business to come to North Carolina.
Can we afford to not play the incentives game? We lose competition with other states?
And that's the thing that you hear a lot. We have to do this because other states did. I wrote a piece years ago and the title of the paper was, Dear Legislator, don't be a butt, because you hear that a lot. We have to do this. I don't agree with incentives, but I have to do it to be competitive. But we have to do it because other states do it. I think that's a cop-out. I think North Carolina's become a leader, particularly since 2010 in so many areas, economically, fiscally, with budget decisions that we've made. This is a way that we could really lay groundwork and be a real national leader. Having said that, if we are going to do the incentives, then there's smarter ways to do it, more accountability, so that you don't just hand out bags of cash, but you in fact have requirements for jobs, for capital investment. Investing in infrastructure needs rather than just giving away a bag of cash. So if for example, if you invest in roads and bridges, in an exit off of a highway to attract a particular business, if that business gets up and leaves North Carolina, at least you've got an asset that may appeal to someone else. You're not just left with nothing.
Let's go to John. John, what's news this week?
Well, I just weigh in quickly on what's been said, in so much as I think part of this conversation that may be missing is the intangible side of it. The things like robotics and automation and how those are driving changes in our industry. Having said that, that's a much bigger conversation. It is something people should be on the lookout for because those are driving changes. Now, interestingly, you guys just both talked about changing business industry landscapes. I think it'd be interesting to talk about some of the, because this is more in my wheelhouse, some of the news, some of the tectonic shifts that are happening in our news industry that will affect those. So that's the direction that I'll trend in. Basically, the business of news is changing dramatically, and that is forcing changes for businesses that use news for the things that they do. Some very interesting numbers out from Pew, and I'll just defer to some notes that I made. But basically, for the first time ever, cable news became the most watched, or the way in which the most Americans gathered their information about the 2016 election, about elections. 2016, first year that's happened. And there's no sign that that's slowing down. Newspapers are being cannibalized from the inside, it seems like, and television, cable news is becoming the way that void is being filled. Fox News, just a couple percentages that I found very interesting. Fox News in 2016 had 19% of the viewership, CNN 13%. Facebook was next at 8%, and we remember what happened with Facebook as far as verified news accounts. NPR, 4%, and then New York Times, 3%. So this gives kind of a spread on where people are getting their news. 3% New York Times, 19% Fox News. So what does that mean for businesses, and how do they translate the money that they're going to be spending going into 2018? How do they get their message out? And one more thing and I just leave that as an open question we can discuss and just needs to be thought going forward. But one other thing I'd say is the social and digital components here cannot be overlooked for businesses pushing forward into the 2018 election. That's where political campaigns will trend, and that's where businesses should be putting their money.
Panel, thank you so much.